Hey everybody, back again. So today I'd like to look further at this reframing of gender to help us to lead into a golden age. And if we look at what's really compacted up, that's creating a lot of psychic friction, a lot of resentment with different gender distinctions, and I'm particularly speaking male, female, heterosexual relating here. We have this outpouring now about let's just look at how much females have been doing, and let's look at these checked out men. Okay, these men who don't know how to share their emotions and all of this stuff. But let's also frame and include men in the discussion around the patriarchal constructs. And let's presence that it is actually pretty exhausting to be considered the breadwinner, to be have that responsibility, to have to travel into London or wherever, and that role itself has taken a toll on people. And I want to express that as someone who is quite energy sensitive. And for instance, I teach a lot, I give readings, I communicate with students. By the end of the day, I don't want to talk to anybody, right? And my students know this. And I even have like a protocol for if people missed a meeting, I have to put them on a list and a queue and get through the list because I can't just bend over backwards to include everybody who lunched out, okay? And I have to be fair with my own energetic body. And I think we need to give credit to people who do show up in that system and to also have some empathy towards that. And I know that we have these gender distinctions about women wanting to talk about their feelings and men not wanting to talk about their feelings. But also, um, it's worthwhile noting that in a lot of strong spiritual traditions, it's actually not seen as beneficial to our higher journey to be constantly languishing in our feelings, how we perceive something. And this is a problem, I think, with where people think the highest spiritual attainment is. It's all about relating and intimacy and being able to be vulnerable with each other. And whilst it's really important that we have that ability to be congruent with each other, actually, sometimes I think that we're reducing our possibilities of actually stepping into our higher Dharma path because there's this demonstration in the mainstream paradigm that it's all about that. Okay. And I think that this is another reason why we have a lot of different perspectives to gender that are coming through, and a lot of people feeling that they don't necessarily always want to show up as the female who's always sharing her feelings. And I think that, of course, it's very important that we are not censored. And this is this invisibilizing of the feminine that has taken place. Like a woman's not allowed to say, this isn't working for me. She's seen as mad if she's explaining she's on her cycle, all of those things. And so what we're coming at this with a deficit. So this is why people feel like they need more of it. In astrology, our moon is very much associated with our needs, our feelings. And of course, sometimes people have a very needy moon, okay, but it's not seen as beneficial to be over identified with our feelings. But as we will see, some spiritual and religious traditions try to exorcise any sort of feelings out, and then it's robot zombie apocalypse, and then it's fine, but it's not fine for functional interaction. So I think that we're trying to find a middle way here. And this is again why it's a very interesting time that we're in. So we have all this like AI and all of these things unfolding that some people would say are here to save us time. And if we want to unpack and unhook from all these conditions that have been projected upon us as to how we're supposed to be or not be, a time of exploration of that without it being repressed is going to be very important. So, having more free time, having passive income should be used wisely. And actually, we should become people who are not just dominated by the sense realm. This is how we approach higher spirituality, is that we understand the role of subjectivity in everything that we interact with. And we can't grow, and relationships can't actually grow until we understand subjectivity. So, subjectivity and objectivity as an understanding, especially moving beyond the framework of objectifying women and also of us treating the opposite sex, if we work on a binary, in a dual way, in a binary way, as somehow the bad being. This is a very ancient wound. And this is what we're here to move through at this time, to come to a higher state of relating beyond duality. And so, of course, it will still probably be women popping up babies and certain biological functions. But it's also very important for us to look at what's been going on for men and also to present what another world could look like if women can also move beyond certain languishing on feelings, certain things, and also to stop being the victim once the healing is done, because we have to look at the legacy of war. And war has played out through the male domain. And it's up to women to help men to stop having to enter into that, because as well, men haven't been able to share their trauma. There's this ineffable sense with a lot of men of, the garden shed, the going away and being wild. And we all have our own existential journey, but we have to look not just at the legacy of the patriarchy on women as objects and property, but men as soldiers to perpetuate a machine. And it's women and women getting and coming to peace with their multidimensional capabilities, their yin yang balance, to create a space for men to explore a world where they don't have to go out and fight, and that they can all be taking an active, equal role in community. This is why, if we start to create a timeline of aspiration for that, we can maybe use these tools that are coming for us, like cryptocurrency, like AI, and use them mindfully. Because if we don't examine these existential and gendered uh, residues that sit within us and the role of our ancestors and their survival impulses, then we won't make use of these tools. And this is where I think that recently we had the Pope speaking out about AI. On the tantric perspective, is it's a tool, yet let's use it. So it's an amazing tool to create a more devoted way of being, to share about how we can all rise together. But if anybody's using crypto just for personal gain, or AI just because they want their own income, they're not using it really for how it can help us as a tool for the golden age. So all of these things are pointing to a really beautiful opening for us to look at some of these engendered patterns and residues, because both of these problems that get projected into the conflict realm of relating both stem down to not having any time. Okay, women saturated, don't want to have sex. Okay, men, oh, she's just here for sex. I want her for sex and she's not even doing that. And that's the objectified female. But also, what we're seeing is that if a man is having more passive income, he doesn't have to go into London or wherever, and he can actually start to be a father mother. And this is already happening because a lot of people are coming together, having children, and then they split up. It's a lot more common these days, and there's co-parenting. So all these old gender ideas of what a woman does and what a man does, that's all been changing. And our sort of generation, we're one of the generations where that started to tip on its head. People 10 years younger than me, it's very commonplace. And a lot of men have really stepped up. And so these ideas of what gender were, which were all based around patriarchal constructs of ownership, how workplaces were, all of those things, if we can just zero point all of that, then just see it's like, I'm a daddy mummy, I'm a mummy daddy. There doesn't need to be any sense of feeling threatened by a woman having her own income. Because women want men to rise, women want equality and sharing. Most women, there might be the odd despot out there. And a lot of men, the wounded men, like to think of the of women stepping into their power as somehow evil. But most men, generally, they're just tired and they feel shut down because, again, sometimes women stepping up, they want to feel recognized, and women really do want somebody to help with the dishes. So men stepping up in the domestic sphere, a lot of men are brilliant at it, yeah. And a lot of it's not really that we have these gendered ways of everything working. I think hormones speak a lot to the way we process information at certain times. But we can see, like I was looking the other day and I was thinking about all of this, like in theory, in our gendered world, we wouldn't have the buildings if the men hadn't loved that structure stuff. And I'm into kind of multi-dimensional structure and weaving, but get me to build a 3D building, please don't, because I'll not help anybody, right? Um, and these are things that are usually assigned to what we think is the male intellect. But actually, we can see that this is all changing. We can see that men are stepping up into roles and surpassing women in some of the most caring professions. And women, you know, we have these amazing women scientists. And so these things, if we start to give freedom to that and the space for the relating without the languishing relating keeps us in karma and it becomes drama. And it's always seeking to, "Oh, but I need to tell you how I feel. I need to tell you how I feel." But what we're working at, as I say, is we're working from a deficit. So we have to start to try to understand each other now. And then once we've moved beyond that deficit, actually, this reappointing of what society is really likely. And I think that sitting down together and without pain and wounding and feelings of exclusion, being able to really sing each other in with our fortes and our "I'm so shit at that" things. This is, you know, rather than feeling like we're being sidelined if we with anything if we're a female, but actually not to be mansplained, for everybody to have the space. This is coming. And we can see this in some of the timelines for the coming years. There's certain years when we look at the holistic liberatory astrology where relating new societal structures are really coming in within the next 10 years. So we can see on the horizon that something's coming. But I just think it's really, really important that we sometimes understand that whilst women kind of get the arena in terms of talking about feelings, certainly there are a lot of men's groups now and a lot of men doing like wilderness work together. And this is really, really important because they, just as women were excluded from certain things, men were excluded from being allowed to share emotions. And something epic in the high percentage of people who have got the legacy of war around how they were supposed to grow up, around what they had to think of. You protect your land, you protect this, you protect that. And then that somehow being projected into the idea of a nation state and some sort of national identity. That's not spiritual, okay? And to just presence that there's a lot in there. And that I think that men haven't known where to begin with that. And, you know, we look now at all these, lodges in the Amazon where they're working with war veterans, PTSD and ayahuasca, all sorts of things. And to not demonize men because they haven't had that domain to explore some of this stuff that's so gruesome. And of course, their psyche is trying to compartmentalize it. And that's compartmentalized into the body of the masculine, into the gene pool. That is something that we women need to kind of maybe just calm down on it always being about over languishing on our feelings. And just to understand that learning to subdue the senses so that everything's not just about how I felt about this and I need you all to let me know. This is actually not where the emancipation fully ends, okay? And it definitely is important. It's part of the healing journey. And this is why things like IFS are so popular at the moment, because when we find these parts that didn't get to express things, great things happen. But if we're always thinking, I have a part that needs to speak, I have to do this, da 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 da, we actually stay fragmented because we're not actually able to transmute and work through that with a deeper state of observation. Okay. And it's always kind of trying to pull somebody in. And I think that's why men have, there's been a kind of censoring and visibilizing, which to some degree sometimes has its own benefits. Because I grew around up around a lot of that. And I actually see that it helped me not to just always be seeking attention about everything, because it was kind of like, eh. And if you study under quite a lot of strong spiritual teachers, they're not there trying to pamper you and go there, and let you over emote because they know that that's going to perpetuate your dualistic programming. So how do we move from presencing each other to actually then just being able to move through stuff because we feel safe together, okay? And this is where I think we're in this exciting time. And if we make use of these amazing resources that we have and understand that these resources are here for as a window, and not again, not to get fixated upon them, and not to think that they solve everything that we need in our human body, then we have this accelerator point because the thing that has held us all back, the time and the capacity, and then people are irritable, things come out the wrong way, they don't have time to be mindful, they don't work through things, then the child's crying, then it's time for work, and then things don't get resolved and more psychic energy stews, okay? And actually, if we can come in and use that window well, then we won't need to overindulge all the time. And those tendencies, which are like these repressed infuriations by each party, those will start to exacerbate. Is that no, not exacerbate, alleviate. So, yeah, sorry, I sometimes get words mixed up in my Menno brain. A little one here or there. It's just like I go surfing around the cosmos, and then English language and nuances sometimes go bing. You'll notice this from time to time. When I'm not in Menno brain, it'll be okay. But hey, let's normalize these things. They happen for a while for women, for maybe many years. So what? You hopefully you understand what I'm trying to get at. So let's see how we can weave together. Let's make the use of our tools and let's start to shift even these ideas of what it is, what women need to heal and what men need to heal, and just look at fundamentally that the system has created the saturation of both parties that's created this backlog that we need to work with. Over and out. Ciao, ciao.